It's looking well grim up north for Israel. By Thursday, the United Nations Security Council is expected to vote on whether to extend the mandate of the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, or UNIFIL, in southern Lebanon. Israel not only wants an extension to the mandate, but has asked for increased help from UNIFIL on the border as tensions with the Iranian-backed Hezbollah have been growing, with Hezbollah hoping to eradicate the UN's army. In recent months, Hezbollah has been testing Israel's reserve by erecting military tents south of the blue line of separation between Israel and Lebanon, and several militants have tried approaching the border past the buffer zone. Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah has upped his threats towards Israel, saying that Israel will cease to exist if it fights back against Hezbollah. US Middle East envoy Amos Hochstein is in Lebanon to help defuse the situation, whilst Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant warned the UN over the Iranian threat. But is the global community doing enough to help cool the tensions? What should Israel do next? Pursue the diplomatic route or go for the attack? Is Israel's planned normalization with Saudi Arabia the get-out-of-jail-free card for this conflict? Should UNIFIL increase its presence on the Israel-Lebanon border?
All right, gentlemen, so let's get to it. Should UNIFIL increase its presence on the Israel-Lebanon border? As always, we begin with a quick-fire round, 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we pick up the conversation from there. So, Dr. De Haas, please take the lead. Your 30 seconds are on, sir.
I don't think it makes any difference. They could increase UNIFIL by tenfold, but because of the weakness of the UNIFIL mandate, it doesn't make any difference how many UNIFIL soldiers there are. So it's no good.
This way or another, doesn't matter, you suggest. Major General Dangot, your thoughts?
I think that we should continue with this mandate because you are making your decisions according to alternatives you have. And I think that UNIFIL is one of the last opportunities for us, besides what's going on the other side. The deployment of Hezbollah on the last 2 years is much more close to defense with Radwan forces, and UNIFIL has to fulfill the mandate concerning also some other issues in Lebanon. So in my opinion, we should make it going longer, and also we have to extend it and make it much more deeper with a lot of responsibilities for us.
Last but not least, Ambassador Shek, your take?
Well, there's no real point in increasing UNIFIL. You have to limit your expectations. They are not there to intervene if some kind of aggressive acts are happening. They're there to settle small disputes when they happen, and they're useful for that. But there's no point in increasing them. It's not that will avoid the next confrontation.
Yeah, well, small disputes. We're no longer at this stage of this tango, it seems. And gentlemen, let's please feel free to interact from this point onwards to engage in a conversation. And Ambassador Shek, perhaps let's begin from this point exactly. Are Israel and Lebanon simply playing chicken?
Look, from a diplomat's point of view, this is a typical situation where clearly both sides are not interested in an escalation, but all sorts of circumstances might lead them to it. The situation may just swerve out of control because for all sorts of reasons there is posturing, there are statements that are being made that are mostly more often than not pointed at your own public opinion, at your own people. And then one thing leads to another, and suddenly you find yourself in the middle of a conflict that actually nobody really wanted.
Dr. De Haas, you wanted to chime in, please.
Yes, so we have to distinguish. There is no real conflict between, officially there is, between Lebanon and Israel. But in fact, we're talking here about Hezbollah. Hezbollah, because Lebanon itself is a failed state, right? So we have to focus on Hezbollah. Now, when we come back to UNIFIL, the mandate is weak. the mandate itself, at the time of the ceasefire resolution, it was said that South Lebanon should be disarmed and there shouldn't be any armed groupings. Well, there are. So what's the use of UNIFIL? As to what is currently going on, yes, both sides are screaming a lot. We have to discard this. What is more important, I would say, is that I cannot imagine, but maybe the two other speakers know better than me, why Israel is acting from such a weak point. We've seen damaging of defense. In the north, we've seen these tents of Hezbollah over the Israeli border. We've seen patrols along the border. And Israel basically only says, well, we'll solve this in diplomatically. I can't understand it. Israel has always known that the only way to act is by way of force. Not to start a new war there, but if Hezbollah is at the border doing something, well, you blow them out of it. That's the only right answer.
So, Major General Dangot, is the containment policy, quote unquote, of Israel a mistake at this point in time?
Yes, listen, we have to look in this area in a different way that has been changed recently and dramatically in the last year or so. Israel has a great achievement by identifying the underground tunnels that were planned years by Hezbollah in order to surprise Israel and to go inside some of our area and settlements that besides the defense. I think that what's going now is increasing the situation because Hezbollah and Hamas, that has become player also in the south area of Lebanon, first of all have a unity of strategic. Secondly, they are translating what's going in Israel as a weakness of Israel, and they are trying to build a red line that raising all the time up and up. We don't need UNIFIL as a defender for Israel. We need UNIFIL as a kind of a tool that can also bring evidence, the truth that they are disturbing now Hezbollah. Lebanon, Hezbollah are not willing them to allow to enter any kind of a land all over south area of Lebanon as they declared as a private land. This shows you that is disturbing now. So what is now? We are using it for the delegitimation. For Israel needs the legitimation from the international community for the day it will come. And the both sides are not looking for it now, but the tactic events in this area can bring you to escalation that you are not even thought about it, and for it we need the third side that will be there and that will be kind of addressed. And I myself was a commander of battalion on the time that UNIFIL was absolutely different against Israel, but today they are not disturbing me, but I think they can head us such kind of legitimation, another kind of passing message to Lebanon.
Yes, another tool, as you put it, and time of peace, time of war, and Ambassador Shek, I'm asking you as a diplomat, when will be the point where Israel will have to say, well, diplomacy is just not working anymore?
I think we are far from that point for the moment, simply because as I read it, I think the motivation on both sides for a confrontation is very low. And as long as that is the case, I think that the effort to de-escalate is worthwhile. I don't believe that the only language that can be used here is the language of force. Comes a moment where you need to use force. I certainly agree with that, but we are not there. I think that since Hezbollah is part of the state Lebanon now, failed or not, it doesn't matter, but it's part of the state, it's part of the government. This has been one of the deterrents for the possible escalations in the past few years. Deterrence that has worked quite well. It might not keep always, and clearly a weak Lebanon is not a Lebanon that can easily contain Hezbollah. But I think that for the moment, I simply don't see the interest on one side of the border or the other side of the border to go to a full confrontation. I think there's a lot of teasing going on and a lot of posturing that has more reasons that are in each side's political situation rather than in trying to create a new balance of power.
And yet, Dr. De Haas, is there a situation of real de-escalation, or will at best it be merely buying some more time?
My impression is that the Israeli
buying
government
time is often a very worthwhile deal.
Right, not undermining the importance of time, no doubt about that. Tomorrow's problems, right?
No,
well, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, you can buy years like this. We've been doing it for a long time, since 2006.
Right. Dr. De Haas, please.
Yes, well,
sorry.
But we also have to consider when does Israel consider that a red line has been crossed? In my opinion, tens of Hezbollah, and actually Hezbollah presence over the Israeli border would be unacceptable. Would be unacceptable. I'm not saying we should do a full-fledged war, but if you can see the last couple of months, it's going further. Each time there's a step further. We talk about escalation, but Israel is not doing escalation.
Right.
Israel is doing the opposite. They're only showing a weak point. We all know that these kind of enemies only understand the barrel of the gun. Now, if we look at politics, we also have to understand with the United Nations Security Council, where we have Russia, for instance.
Right.
We have to be clear on the fact that Russia is not a friend of Israel. I mean, Putin was guided by a Jewish family in his youth, so he's not anti-Semitic, but especially now with the Ukrainian war, there are close ties between Russia and Iran, and actually they've been there for years as to armaments sales, as to energy, as to politics. Now, and the same applies to Syria. Assad has been saved by Putin. Why did Putin do this? To have a foothold in the Middle East.
Yes.
Now, therefore, what can you expect from the United Nations Security Council, where Russia has a veto right? Nothing. So,
well, it wouldn't be the first conflict where the UN Security Council means little, if anything at all. Major General Dangot, the floor will be yours right after we get back from the break, and we talk a bit more about this fantasy that global powers will come to save countries here in the Middle Eastern quagmire. A few minutes and we're back with our summit. Do not go anywhere. And Ambassador Shek, never apologize for interacting. This is what Global Eye is all about. A few minutes and we're back. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Still with us here in the summit, Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Mordechai De Haas, Major General Eitan Dangot, and Ambassador Daniel Shek. Thank you all, gentlemen, very much for staying with us. We're also staying on topic, but before we get back to our conversation, Israel Defense Minister Yoav Gallant is in New York this week at the UN, telling the world body, well, wake up before it's too late. Let's take a listen.
I just met, together with Ambassador Erdan, with the UN Secretary General for a conversation on very central subjects in the field of security. The first of them is the whole friction at the Israeli-Lebanese border and the responsibility of the UNIFIL force in these fields to make sure, if possible, to calm this situation. He promised that he would do his best in order to help with that matter. We will know how to defend ourselves by ourselves anyway, but we are not interested in reaching friction.
All right, gentlemen, another quick fire round, 30 seconds each, and we pick it up from there. Simply put, as international organizations failed the Middle East. Major General Dangot, please take the lead.
Basically, they quite failed. And I mean, from UNRWA, if you're coming to UNIFIL, it's a failure. But what are the alternatives for them? So if I'm now looking at Lebanon and all this discussion, we forgot to mention that there is one main, above all, it's Iran. That everything is prepared for the green line from Iran to their proxy Hezbollah to attack Israel. And this will be a game changer for Israel and from the main threat coming from Iran. So meanwhile, I will would take UNIFIL as an opportunity that I have to live with it. I know to live with it. By the way, you ask about diplomacy. Diplomacy is a tool that is now acting very well of exchange of messages, solving problems. Secondly, if we are talking about escalation, war, the day after or during it, and I have experience, we need the diplomacy, and what you are not building now will not be the day after or an hour after. Secondly, I mean that
Major General Dangot, we'll just wrap it up the first round and we'll get back to you. I promise. Ambassador Daniel Shek, 30 seconds, please.
Well, I mean, they have only failed if you had expectations.
Right.
So since my expectations are very low, I don't think that it was a failure. I think that it sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not.
Yeah.
If you frame the expectations right, then you might be satisfied. Look at the MFO in Sinai. Both sides want that agreement to work, and the multinational force of observers is doing a great job.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel De Haas, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. And I saw that I left 15 seconds in the first round, so I take them now. As to international organizations, so we're basically only talking about the United Nations. The EU is always only interested in helping the Palestinians. NATO has its own affairs with Russia and Ukraine. So as to the UN, well, the big leaders have their own purposes. As I already said, Russia has its war with Ukraine and is interested in Iran and Syria. And the US has its own problems in the Pacific with China.
Yeah.
And Russia, of course, has its Ukraine. So we don't have anything to expect from the United Nations, not at all. It's not an international government, and it will never be, and Israel is on its own.
All right, Major General Dangot, please.
Yeah. What I would like to add, that only when the two sides have a wedding like Israel and Egypt on the agreement, it can be wonderful. All the other, it was mostly, I think, damage to Israel, and it make us a lot of problems that the political or the policy of the Foreign Affairs Ministry worked very hard, and many times that was a delegitimation to Israel that brought some kind of decisions against Israel, also from the European community, because of those organizations. But I think that in Lebanon it's now different because of the fact that Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas are planning their plans, and Israel can use kind of surprise of making such kind of attack or by itself towards Hezbollah. We need the basic activities by UNIFIL there, because I think we found the minimum at that maximum opportunities that we have partner in order to create the basic for time is coming, and to bring the international community with us, with the fact that Lebanon is not a state. It's a joke now what's going there.
Well, perhaps expanding the debate a bit, Ambassador Shek, is Israel's potential pending normalization with Saudi Arabia some sort of a get-out-of-jail card from this conflict with Lebanon?
No, I don't believe so. I think the conflict with Lebanon and with Hezbollah, it is, of course, in the context of what is going on in the Middle East, but it has survived, quote unquote, so many changes, positive and negative, in the Middle East, and we're still stuck with this pestering conflict.
Yeah.
So I don't think that will make a difference. But I agree with General Dangot that UNIFIL should stay there, obviously, to try and help de-escalate. But we all know that with the first shot fired, they will be the first to leave, and that's their mandate. They're not there to protect Israel or to intervene in fighting. They're trying to help the sides avoid getting into an open fight, and that is a very useful thing.
So, Lieutenant Colonel De Haas, what would be the difference, the line between a provocation and the declaration of war, that is?
Well, that's where we have to be very careful. Of course, politicians like the Israeli Minister of Defense, they make statements for the audience, right? For their own, the people at the background. And the other side obviously also does it. So we have to neglect that. A provocation, I would say a provocation like these tents over the Israeli border, that is unacceptable. But that doesn't mean that you have to fight a full-fledged war and invasion into Lebanon. But you have to show some force, limited force. Because the current situation is that Israel has accepted every step.
And how can you make sure that the force will stay limited? The other side may not want to play that game. So, I mean, if you can avoid firing the first shot, and with all due respect, I mean, these tents are not exactly a tremendous threat to the security of Israel. It's just a posturing game. So if you can avoid escalating this into any kind of exchange of violence, I think it's still worth the effort.
Well, I don't think so. It reminds me a bit, I'm sorry to say, about the Yom Kippur War. I think Prime Minister Golda Meir said, no, we know there's a certain kind of military build-up, but we won't attack them as first because we will get the blame. Well, I think we have learned a lot from the Yom Kippur War, and in this case, we should not allow these further escalations.
Comparison is very audacious, my dear friend.
They are not a problem, but each time they go a step further because they know that Israel is not responding to it.
Yeah.
And of course, they take advantage of the internal political problems in Israel.
All right, Major General Dangot, to wrap it up for us, yeah.
Few remarks. First of all, in my opinion, the speech of Gallant that you brought is for the listeners of the Israeli civilians, not the other ones. He put it in Hebrew, and it was because of the situation. Secondly, I think that UNIFIL is still fulfill here some important thing, because when it's coming to tactics and what you just provocation, it helping alone to reduce immediately the tents that can raised up by local activities. What happened with the tent is Israeli tactic mistake that was by the local commanders in this area, because a shell of tank could put it in few seconds, going to hell with those people who are there, and is still there to solve their problems. But we still need the presentation of UNIFIL, because I say in escalation or a war, they will go to their shelters, but you need them to an hour that you need exactly kind of decisions for ceasefire and other kind of things.
Hey, I see you liked it. Want more? Just hit the subscribe button right here. Go on. I know you want to.